I don't know what's going on. Hello! Welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant. We are recording AV Rant, episode number 629. And this, what you're looking at right now, is the live recording session. So this is just our Google Hangout. It's not going to be polished at all. There might be dropouts because it's Google Hangouts. And, okay. I don't know. Should I mention this now? Because there's like no one here and they're probably not going to scroll back to. I'll have to mention it later. I'm putting a link to the photos we talk about in the show notes down at the bottom.
Yeah,
so I just threw them up in a Flickr album. And
don't get used to that. As apparently, I just heard today they're shutting that down.
Flickr's going away. Flickr?
Yeah. I just heard that on the way over here. It's like they're telling everybody. Oh no, they didn't. I'm sorry, I take it back.
No, Google Plus, that's shutting down for sure.
No, it wasn't Flickr. They're not shutting down. They changed it from a terabyte to 1,000 total photos.
That's right. I saw that.
Okay, that's
I don't really care about that. I
mean,
yeah. By the time we get to 1,000 photos, you know what? Sorry, those episodes are going away. Although people do seem to go back to like AVRant episodes from 2 years ago, but whatever. I guess this will help people who are watching this after it's been recorded or whatever. Anyway, picture, link, Flickr account in the show notes of this YouTube video. So if you just can't wait, there's going to be photos in there that we don't get to, but whatever. They're in the order in which they will be shown in the show, so you can kind of follow along. There. That's how that's being handled, because I'm not bothering with this screen sharing crap on a second computer screen nonsense.
One of these days I'm going to start like randomizing the question order just to really screw with you.
Yeah.
It'd be like your birthday. Like, oh, it's your birthday. Oh, good.
Or just
here we go.
Somehow get into my Flickr account and do that. Since I did just put it on our shared AV Rant name and password that we use for everything else. So.
Oh well, I wouldn't know about that.
All right.
Are we ready?
I think so.
Okay. Scroll back to the top. I have not read any of these questions. It'll be very, very enlightening.
Well, you got the ones from last week.
I didn't read those yet either.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Did you watch the Super Bowl? Did you watch any ads? Is there anything interesting?
I technically watched the Super Bowl, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I suppose I did.
I didn't. I heard the result. I heard it was like not a super thrilling game.
It was not. It was very boring.
Everyone was for some reason like mad at Maroon 5. I'm not sure why.
I didn't quite get that. I don't know. All I know is that there was one guy in a parka, like a big furry parka, and another guy who kept taking off layers of clothes until he was shirtless. Okay. I'm like, well, clearly you're in two different time zones, or something.
Two different weather climates, different parts of the stage.
I don't care about any of that, but what I actually did this morning is some YouTube video popped up in my feed. It said, do you want to see all of the movie trailers from the Super Bowl? I'm like, right. Yes, I do. Yeah. That's what I watched. So some of the ads were all right. There was the one that I really liked was a Twilight Zone one.
Oh, okay.
That was really cool. I actually had people, because I was my next door neighbors have like it might still be going on today. I'm not sure. It's usually at least 2 days long party. Mm-hmm. For Super Bowl. So it was still continuing last night, which was Monday. This is Tuesday. But we were over there and it made it look like the station had gone out. Okay. And everybody started groaning and everything else. And then it popped back up with Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. I'm very excited. Jordan Peele, it's like all of a sudden he's like the horror movie, a tour that we've been looking for so long.
Seems like we'll see how long it keeps going, but good track record so far. So he's built it the right way. And,
So he did Get Out.
Get Out. Yeah. There's Us coming
up. Us is coming out, but we don't know if that's any good yet.
And of course, Key and Peele, but that's
not horror.
Not horror or odd Twilight Zone stuff. So it's a genre change, but clearly he knows what he's doing in so far as what he's done so far.
Like last year, there was an announcement of a new thing that was happening on a streaming service during the Super Bowl. So Amazon Prime announced the Hannah thing. Yeah, it's going to be a whole series, but episode 1 is available for 24 hours starting from after the Super Bowl. And honestly, starting from towards the end of the Super Bowl when I started watching it.
So is that a serialized adaptation of the movie Hannah, the Saoirse Ronan one? I don't know.
I don't know. It's
Young girl assassin? Is that the basic premise?
That's basic premise, I guess, so far.
Sounds like it's a serialization of the movie then.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I didn't see that movie, but okay. But it was all right. I watched it. It was the girl is good, and I mean, if you're gonna take an entire series and put it on the back of a young girl, she's got to be an amazing actor. Or people like, she's an actress. No, she's not. All actors call themselves actors, no matter gender. That's just I guess it is. That's true. So she was very good, and I'm interested to see where it goes. So I did watch it, and it was fine. So we'll see. And then lip sync was off because it's Amazon Prime.
Of course.
So that was exciting. And now The Expanse, which is a show I really liked. I saw the first season when that was available. Now all 3 seasons, or the first 3 seasons, I don't know if it's still going on, are going to be available on Amazon Prime, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I get to watch that, and bad lip sync. So,
yeah. Good times.
All right, let's get into this. This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your AV and home theater questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly, Rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. I almost knocked my computer completely off of the stand.
Lovely.
Yeah, that would have been tragic. my computer,
I'm sure that would speed it up.
Is very sick. My poor laptop is very sick. It went from when I first got it, it had a 7-hour battery life, and then it kind of settled into about 3 to 4 hour battery life, and now it's down to about hour and 10 minutes. Okay. Then I had to restart it the other day because it just said, you know what? I'm not waking up for nothing. All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week if you support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There you will be taken to a PayPal donation site. So we want to thank Ray, Steve, and James for doing that. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, Ray, Steve, James, thank you all so much for that support on PayPal.
We also want to thank our 80 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up for a monthly donation from you to your content creators that you want to support. And one of those can be us. So we want to thank our 80 patrons.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up. And that'll be an automatic monthly donation. Thanks so much to our 80 patrons over there.
Well, if you can't support the podcast in some way, you can always find some way to do it and then let us know what you did so we can thank you. So Mark bought some speaker grill cloth from Parts Express to cover his DIY acoustic panels. It's affordable and a nice large 70-inch wide bolt. He put in a good word for us for the recommendation. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for talking us up to Parts Express.
In the news, Ultraviolet is shutting down on July 31st. And like people ask, what's going to happen if one of these places shut down? We're going to say, you're going to be screwed. And that's exactly what you are.
We're going to see. Yeah, so
on the website, they are recommending that you link your Ultraviolet digital rights locker to as many retailers as possible. Just all of them. Saying they're working with their retail partners to try and preserve access to as much as your Ultraviolet library as possible once the service is gone for good. So if you just bought the movie itself and then were able to link it to your Ultraviolet account, well, you still have the disc. But if you just bought it through one of these services or Ultraviolet itself, you are out of luck.
Yeah. So, okay, so Ultraviolet, it's a digital rights locker, and it's a little bit confusing, right? Because so you get the code if you buy a Blu-ray, right? It'll say here's your digital copy, and it'll also often have the Ultraviolet logo, and that's the way to do it. You might have done it in iTunes as well, but iTunes was not linked to Ultraviolet,
right? And
you could only redeem one of those codes. Yeah. So if you redeem the code, you would have done so at one of the retail partners, like in the States, Vudu is the largest. Now, up here in Canada, we had a service called Cinema Now, which was run by Best Buy Canada, and they were by far the largest Ultraviolet retailer. But Best Buy Canada decided, we'll just shut that down. That was a couple of years ago they did that. So that basically left us with Flixster up in Canada, which Flixster in the States closed down years ago. So that was all fun. But the thing was, you would redeem the code at one retailer, which now in your account you owned that movie title at that retailer. So you now owned it at Vudu, or you owned it at Flixster, wherever you redeemed the code. But because you had this Ultraviolet digital rights thing, if you went to any other service provider that was also part of Ultraviolet, you could watch the movie there, but you didn't own the movie at all the different places. You only owned the movie at the first retailer where you redeemed it. Ultraviolet gave you the ability to watch it at any other Ultraviolet retailer. So in Canada, when cinema now closed down, it was like, okay, you can still watch your stuff at Flixster, but you don't own it at Flixster if you redeemed it at cinema now.
No. Yeah.
So with Ultraviolet now just going away, what they're basically saying is they're hoping they can work with the retail partners so that if you owned it one place, you will own it everywhere. That's the idea, which is exactly what Movies Anywhere is doing now. Movies Anywhere, you buy it at any Movies Anywhere partner, and it just populates in every service that Movies Anywhere works. And that's basically what's taking over. So the silver lining to all of this is that hopefully, with Ultraviolet going away, the last couple of studios that haven't signed on with Movies Anywhere, which I think is Paramount and Lionsgate, might be MGM as well, but I think those are the ones. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize, but I think those are the ones. They haven't signed on with Movies Anywhere yet.
Somebody 3 months in the future right now on YouTube just
That's
screaming at you in the comment section.
Absolutely. But
Hi, guy. Hello,
hopefully it'll mean they'll just come on board with Movies Anywhere. Now, of course, that doesn't help anybody outside of the United States because Movies Anywhere only works in the United States.
Oh, that's good for us at least.
Yeah, so if Ultraviolet can at least get all of their retail partners around the world to say, okay, Ultraviolet's going away, that means any movies you had access to via Ultraviolet will now just preserve those rights. But not every service had every movie.
Right.
And not every movie that was part of Ultraviolet is part of Movies Anywhere. So it might be the case that some of your movies, you just lose access to them, even though you paid for them or you bought the physical copy and redeemed the code. And I mean, they say that right on their website. They're like, we think most of it will be fine, but they can't guarantee all of your titles, and that kind of stinks.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought Ultraviolet was owned by Walmart. Was I?
No, that's Voodoo. Voodoo is
okay.
a specific retailer that's owned by Walmart. Ultraviolet was like the actual. It was the DECE, which I forget what that stands for, but it's like the actual like industry body around the digital distribution of consumer electronics and entertainment.
Right.
So.
All right. Brent Butterworth posted an article for Soundstage titled Eardrums Suck, the Mystery Solved. He spoke with a headphone engineer to find out why many active noise canceling headphones create the sensation that you've suddenly lost air pressure outside of your ears, and it feels as though your eardrums are being pushed outwards or sucked into the headphone cups. Apparently, it's actually psychosomatic, and it's the inverse of the sensation you get in the anechoic chamber, where it feels like your eardrums are being pushed in. It's due to the relative balance of low and high frequencies, which our brain interprets as a change in air pressure. Active noise-canceling headphones only cancel bass and lower mid-range. Otherwise, the microphones would create feedback if you tried to also actively cancel the high frequencies. Meanwhile, anechoic chambers can absorb all treble, but some bass still persists. So that imbalance is what tricks our brain. So you get bass, so you feel like you get a little bit of bass, but nothing else. Feels like your ears are being pushed in, or your eardrums. You get no bass,
no bass, but a little bit of
treble, and it feels like your drums are getting sucked out. Got it.
There you go. So it was a mystery, but apparently solved. Good stuff. Active noise canceling. I prefer to just put in in-ear monitors that block the sound passively. No active noise canceling for me.
All right, a new lower-cost Calman home calibration software is coming soon. Now, Calman is pretty much the industry. I remember when they came out, back in the day when we first started using them, and they were the alternative to whatever the professional grade stuff was, which was ridiculously expensive, and this stuff was like a fraction of it, but a fraction is still like $1,000 or $500 or whatever it was. So the exact price for this new lower cost one hasn't been announced yet, but it'll be lower than the current home enthusiast software, which sells for $400. Calman Home is meant to be used with the new 2019 LG and Panasonic TVs that will include test panel patterns built in, which eliminates the need for an external test pattern generator. So those built-in test patterns plus Calman Home plus some sort of measurement device will allow users to do their own calibrations on TVs that supported, all for a lower price than has ever been available before. And I think I can say this. I think accurately that never before has maybe not never. Let's say rarely has a technology finally become available for the consumer when they needed it the least.
Yeah,
it's like we finally have this lower cost thing that we can do to help calibrate your TVs right when TVs are coming from the factories. Basically, we're going, leave it alone. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, there a lot of very good TVs are coming very close to perfectly calibrated, as long as you put them in their cinema mode or
right
ISF picture mode or whatever. Yeah, they are pretty darn close. This will get you a little bit closer. Although a lot of professional calibrators have pointed out how they still need to refine the auto cal because at the moment it puts no limits on how far it'll move the sliders.
Oh.
And it's like, if we can make the green one notch better by moving it all the way to the right or the left, we'll do. And it doesn't quite work out properly when it does that. So, this will still end up costing you more in total than a one-time professional calibration because you will still need to buy a light meter of some sort to take the readings, and those will cost more just on their own. So that plus the software, but it's gonna probably be close to about the cost of 2 professional calibrations. So if you're gonna do it more than twice, you're probably going to save money versus hiring a pro. Will it be as good as what a pro could get you? Probably not. But there you go.
It's also tends to be a lot harder to use with, well, clearly this is meant to be used with specific TVs, but
that's right.
Even if they made it more generalized, using it with projectors is usually quite the nightmare.
That's what the Calman enthusiast is for.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. From our listener, I guess these are comments. Yes. Tap mentioned greentoe.com. It's a name your price service where you enter how much you're willing to pay for any given item. Then Greentoe forwards your offer to a network of fully authorized retailers, and if any of them accept your offer, you purchase the item from them with free shipping guaranteed. It's basically online haggling to allow retailers to sell things below the minimum advertised price by manufacturers. Okay.
I didn't know about that service, so just forwarding it on if some folks want to have a look and give it a try.
We do not necessarily endorse that yet.
We don't necessarily endorse it. It's something that we're to put out there in the ether.
The fully authorized retailers are the ones that's what makes I want to make sure that that's true.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you decide you're going to put a price out for an LG TV, I would go to LG and make sure that they are an authorized retailer before I did that, or service. I mean, I don't know how else to say.
I mean, they even point out on their website, they're like, yeah, you can go to a store and haggle. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. This is just a more automated and a wider net that you're casting. So,
Richard on Facebook suggests using contact paper to make a black subwoofer into a white finish instead of paint. Less mess, and it's possible to remove the contact paper later if you want to go back to the black finish. I suppose that's theoretically possible.
Yeah, so that's like your self-adhesive liner paper that you might put on the bottom of shelves or bottom.
Have you ever tried to take the stuff off the bottom of shelves?
Yeah.
Your black finish will no longer be black. I'll tell you that. You might as well just paint it. But okay.
That's nice.
All right, Mike shared some updates on his theater build, the one with most of the gear 60 to 70 feet away in a rack, but the Xbox One in the theater room and all of the wires being pulled through a bulkhead and soffit. This is the guy who had the HDMI issues.
Mm-hmm.
Our sandwich talk happened to come on just as his wife was listening to him. It made her wonder what the heck he's been taking advice. What the heck he's been taking his advice from for months, or who the heck would be more accurate. Right. Thank you very much. And this is also the guy who's talking about the wire lubricant. So there's actual wire pulling lubricant that's a thing. It's got a link that I'm not going to follow right now.
It is named.
But he later found out that dish soap works just as well.
Yep.
Okay. Soundproofing company says keeping any holes in walls as small as possible is preferable, but for electrical boxes, use putty and caulk, just as we said. In his case, that will make for a cleaner installation. So that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He put his Harmony hub in the theater and used a 3.5 millimeter to Ethernet adapter to extend his Harmony's mini IR blasters over to his rack, and it seems to have worked so far. Since he had problems running a long 3.5 millimeter extension cable for his Odyssey mic, he took our advice and used a regular shielded RCA cable with some 3.5 millimeter plug adapters instead, and it works perfectly. Yeah, the shielding is going to make a big difference.
It's the shielding. That's what did it.
So he tried a powered HDMI switch in his theater so that he can use more than just his Xbox in there. It worked fine. It was easy to program his Harmony to select whatever source he wants. So drywall got delayed by the terrible weather, which I guess was the cold. He must be up north. Yeah. But that let him install his male inlet near his rack and get his battery backup installed. So things are looking pretty good. So good.
There you go. Happy to hear those updates. Happy that all the various extension cables and whatnot worked properly. And that converting the 3.5 millimeter IR to an Ethernet cable, good idea. So yeah good stuff.
Jason wanted to confirm for us that you can put multiple Amazon Echo devices into groups so they all play the same thing at the same time. Thank you, Jason. We were talking about that last week.
Yes, we weren't certain ourselves, so good to know. Thank you.
Steve the Geek on Twitter gave the AVRant Bluetooth low latency products a try since we recommended them for making his Audio-Technica M50X headphones wireless, and he had experienced some glitches when he tried using his Xbox One controllers as a solution. Unfortunately, the AVRant devices also had stuttering. So I stuttered saying it. That was on purpose. Let's just go with that.
Absolutely.
He says he does have a ton of Z-Wave and Zigbee devices, so perhaps he's getting some wireless interference. He decided to resort to a long extension cable. Ha! I was right.
Yep. Yeah, you did say it. That was the first thing you said. And he didn't want to do it, which I also understand. But I haven't had any issues with those AVRant Bluetooth ones, but I also haven't had issues with my Xbox controller. He's had issues with both, and it's like, that's got to be interference going on. I mean, you had issues with your Bluetooth when your microwave oven goes on, right?
I do. Every time the microwave goes on, you could tell Alexa sounds like she's getting put through a blender.
Yeah, so...
Oops, I said her name. Sorry.
We did. Yeah, sorry about that. But interference can happen. He must... That's the only thing I would suspect. Must have some wireless interference. So sorry about that. I hate it when something that I recommend myself doesn't work out for somebody. I hate when that happens. But he wasn't mad. He understands, and we're resorting to the long extension cable.
Nick, at least we're into the questions here. Nick has been enjoying the Sennheiser HD598CS headphones that he chose over the even more comfortable but more expensive Shure 1540s. He's been plugging them into the headphone outlet of some very inexpensive Yamaha desktop speakers, and for the most part it's been fine, but occasionally you get some static that sounds almost like a radio station isn't quite tuned in, or maybe just a loose connection. In any case, he plans to get some Audio Engine desktop speakers to replace them. Is there something much better to recommend for around the same price? He's got, what does he got? Oh, he's got some, so he wants speakers and he wants to be able to plug into his, Audio Engine and work fine.
Yeah, well, in particular, though, you will want to look for their HD3 model, because that is the one that has a headphone jack on the front.
No, that's the one you're looking for, yeah.
So not all of their models have headphone jacks on the front, but the HD3 do. Now that one, let me see, I believe it has a USB input. Yeah, it's got a USB input. So if a desktop setup sounds like it's a computer setup, right? So yeah. That's what I would assume. So yeah, that'd be the model. And yeah, I wouldn't run to point you to anything else. They are $350, the HD3s, but they're a great option. Audio Engine makes very good sounding speakers, good solid power in them, and it's got a headphone jack on that HD3 model.
Yeah, I have Audio Engines in my one of my computers, and they work very well. I like them quite a bit. Okay, he's been looking at a lower priced DAC headphone amp devices and came across the Topping DX3 Pro for $220. It's got a nice display, a physical volume knob, and both a headphone jack and regular pre-out, so that you could connect both his headphones and a pair of desktop speakers. His the Audio Sciences review is positive and indicates it has plenty of power and a low noise floor. By the way, Audio Science review has now posted a handy graph of all the DACs they've measured so that you can quickly compare signal above distortion and noise levels. So should he buy the Topping DAC /amp? I'm looking at it now. I'm trying to look at it.
Yeah, so I mean, this would be if he decides to not get those Audio Engine HD3s, because that's the only reason you would need a separate headphone amplifier and preamp that could then feed powered speakers. So let's say he just opts for some other desktop speakers that are powered speakers, but they don't have their own headphone jack. Is this the thing he should get? Now, what is it, about $220?
Yeah, 220.
So,
220, yeah.
I mean, it's got all the features. It did measure well, according to Audio Science Review. I don't know how much to trust them or not, but it looked like fairly objective measurements they were taking. They didn't put much subjectivity in.
I don't know why you're going this. I mean, if you just want a headphone DAC, I mean, you
get the Audio Engines, but
I don't see what you think you're going to get out of these that you aren't going to get out of the Audio Engines. Do you have speakers that are self-powered that you like enough that you don't want to exchange them? Because it sounds like he wants to get rid of these Yamahas.
He wants to get rid of the Yamahas, yeah.
So if you're going to do that, then go ahead and get the Audio Engines. Are fantastic sounding computer speakers, desktop computer speakers. Even their small ones, and I'm not sure exactly which ones you recommend.
That's
but
the HD2 pluses.
Those are
the little guys.
They have way more bass than you think they're going to. You know what I mean? They sound pretty clear.
Like, let's say he got HD2 pluses. They don't have a headphone jack, or let's just say, no matter what we say, this is what he's going to do. He's going to buy a separate headphone amplifier. Is this the one? I mean, I would simply say there are less expensive alternatives. Like Monoprice actually has a very decent desktop headphone amplifier that also has pre-outs on the back, so you can do the same thing. Now, the Monoprice one, it's only $80. It does not have an optical input or a coaxial input like this topping one does. I don't know if that's what you're using, but it does have a USB input, which again, if what you're connecting is a computer, shouldn't be a problem. So that's got a volume dial on the front, it's got a headphone jack on the front, and you can choose whether you're using the RCA input or the USB DAC input. If you want a headphone amplifier that I think is great for the price, that's JDS Labs Atom. That's a little $100 headphone amplifier. Now, that is just a headphone amp, so it's all analog. It doesn't have any digital on that one, but it does have a preamp output, so you can still daisy chain through to a pair of speakers. Then JDS Labs also sells a little $100 DAC, which is just a DAC. But again, like this one does have an optical, it doesn't have coaxial. So it's got USB and optical as far as the digital, and then it's got analog outputs, which you could use to feed to the little Atom headphone amplifier. So that'd be $200 total, which is still less expensive, but it's two parts. It's two pieces. And the Monoprice and the JDS... Yeah, separate. The JDS and the Monoprice, they don't have a little front panel display like the topping does. So if that's worth $20 to you. So I don't have any big reason to steer you away from the topping other than in your particular case, I just get the audio engine, then you don't need a separate DAC amp.
Yeah. On a different topic here is talking about using sound clips and hat channels along with 2 layers of drywall with green glue when doing soundproof construction. He has concerns about how much ceiling height he would lose. But he also saw a video where they demonstrated installing the sound clips and hat channels on the wall, and then they pushed the drywall to show how it can move like a giant panel on a spring. So does that mean the whole ceiling could actually move up and down? If so, how much? And if the walls and ceiling can all move in and out like that, how do you prevent them from rattling or smacking together and making noises of their own? I mean, the idea is that you are essentially decoupling the drywall from the superstructure around. Yeah. So yes, it has to move. It's like,
I mean, it's a big squishy spring. That's what you created.
The whole idea here is that the sound pressure within the wall goes into within the room, goes into the wall, and then tries to change tries to move everything up, everything within the wall. But the absorption of it, the springiness, dissipates that energy.
That's right.
And that's what keeps that energy from going into the other rooms. Now, does that mean that your entire walls are like, bouncing like a driver on the front of a subwoofer, at 60 hertz? No, it's just a little bit of movement. It's just enough.
Yeah, I mean, when they physically push on, I mean, first of all, this was not a finished thing. This was just like one layer drywall directly on the hat channel on the sound clip. Here's how much you can move. And it's about, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch max that you could physically compress it with your hand just pushing on it. But sound waves are not going to do that. Yeah. It's going to be barely noticeable in sound waves. But yes, your walls and your ceiling, if this is the way you have constructed things, they will be able to physically move. That's the entire idea. You are damping that movement. Now, how do you stop them from rattling or smacking together? Well, what you're supposed to do anytime you do this type of construction is leave a small gap, about a 1/2 inch gap, between, like, let's say you've decoupled the ceiling using sound clips and half channels, and you've also decoupled your walls using sound clips and half channels. Well, between the drywall for the wall and the ceiling, you'd leave about a 1/2 inch gap, and you fill that in with acoustic sealant or acoustic caulk. Which is, ceiling putty that never fully hardens. It too remains a soft, squishy spring. So that fills in that gap, allowing that movement to happen without that bond and that seal ever being broken because it never fully cures. So that's how that works.
So, nope.
Surround sound.
I forgot to scroll down. On the topic of surround speaker placement, in his current setup, his surround speakers are about 3 feet above his ear level, and he isn't happy with the results. He preferred them to sound less elevated. Dolby, of course, now recommends having the surround speakers right at seated ear level, just like the front speakers. But Nick agrees with us that if you have more than more than one seat in a row, you'd want to have at least a clear line of sight rather than having the seats backs or people's heads in the way. So what about having the surround speakers a short distance in front of the seats? What would be the issues, if any, with putting them right at ear level but a bit forward so that the seat backs and the heads won't be all in the way? It sounds wrong.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I have experienced this at a friend's house where his seats are about 2 feet behind
where the surround speakers
are. And then if you lean back, because the seats recline, if you lean back, you're even further back than that. And it's just wrong. Just sitting on the ground, even though these things are high to begin with, just sitting on the ground in line with those surround speakers makes a huge difference in how everything sounds. Now, in this case, if this is really your issue, cheating them down a little bit, whatever, fine. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that if it's your preference.
Well, I mean, 3 feet above seated ear level is higher than we typically say these days. I mean, that's where they used to go.
Yeah.
But these days we're usually like 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet, because that's just enough to sort of clear over people's heads and give you a line of sight.
Right.
So I could see it.
You could come down a little bit, and you can come forward a little bit, or
you can even
whatever.
just angle them down if that's doable.
Right.
That tends to help.
Yeah, I wouldn't move them in front of my seat.
I wouldn't put them in front of you. No, I mean, in channel-based content, sounds are put where those speakers are supposed to be, which is either straight to your sides or a little bit behind you, never somewhat in front of you. If that's where they wanted it, then they would have partially mixed the sound into your front speaker as well, so that you get that sort of... It doesn't totally work stereo imaging because it's to your side, but that's the idea of how they would pan that sound forward if that's what they wanted to do. So, yeah, don't put your surrounds in front of you if you can avoid it.
So you heard us recommend installing 2 or more side surround speakers on each side when people have multiple rows of seating, and then wire all the speakers on one side together in series. But could Atmos allow for better, more seamless Atmos allow for each side surround speaker to be discrete? Would that be preferable and allow for better, more seamless panning? Sure, if there's only one seat you care about. See, the thing is, we're trying to get the people on the sides all to have the same experience, right? Different rows, I'm sorry, to have the same experience coming from the sides. Now, if you were worried about one seat in your theater, in theory, you could put any number of speakers around you at any height.
Any number.
Well,
Atmos
I'm saying in theory, right. Atmos, the way that Atmos works is you tell it where the speakers are, and it says, okay, now that I know where these speakers are, I place the object, using the speakers that I know are there. So in theory, if you had a computer that was running all this stuff, where you could say, I've got one right here, one right here, one right here, and then all of that. But it's not just one seat you care about. We don't have those sort of options available to us right now. And it wouldn't even be advisable, because that would mean that it is Atmos, or at least your receiver would be trying to place the sound in the room using those 2 side surround speakers separately, which means the people in the back row would be getting a different experience than the people in the front row.
I mean, for certain pans, I guess it would keep it really, really discreet, but there's a lot of surround information that isn't panning. It's just ambience, and now it's coming from the wrong location. Yeah, I mean, Atmos at home can technically use as many as 24 speakers on that, floor level, and as many as 10 speakers on the overhead level. And they do have, like, your standard 7.1, but then they also have ones called Surround 1 and Surround 2, which Surround 1 goes a little in front of the normal surround speaker, and Surround 2 goes a little behind the normal surround speaker. 15 degrees azimuth is the difference. So basically, those 24 speakers, you put a speaker every 15 degrees around you. That's what the home version of Atmos more or less works out to.
Right.
And you can do that with an altitude 32, a Trinov altitude 32. That's the only one that can do it, but it could theoretically be done. But yeah, the other thing was, you might be saying, okay, well, if you have 2 side surround speakers and you're sitting in the back row, that means one of those side surround speakers is in front of you. And didn't we just say, don't put a side surround speaker in front of you? Well, that's where the whole precedence effect comes in, which is that the side surround speaker that is to your side and closest to you, your brain is going to say that's where the sound came from. It's not going to put together that the sound also came in front of you. The precedence effect says whichever one arrived first and loudest, that's where your brain says the sound came from. So it works remarkably well to have a side surround speaker for each row.
So back on the topic of HDCP 2.3 and HDMI 2.1, let's say you have an HDMI 2.0 receiver TV with HDCP 2.2. What features would you actually be missing out on? Right now, none. So, I mean, literally, obviously the stuff that needs the super high bandwidth, like 8K resolution and 4K at 120 frames per second, but those things seem to be less important than variable refresh rate and EARC. What does 2.1 really give us? We don't know, really. I mean,
well, this is the problem with people referring to the spec numbers.
Yeah.
Which HDMI has never wanted us to do.
But people do it because if not, we just talk about HDMI. They need to give it different names or something like.
Yeah, well, I mean, getting something that, so let's say you get a product that has a genuine HDMI 2.1 chipset in it.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You could have a genuine HDMI 2.1 chipset that refuses to output anything other than 480p. That's possible, right? The HDMI 2.1 chip guarantees you nothing. On the flip side of that, a lot of the features that were part of the HDMI 2.1 specification can be implemented on an HDMI 2.0 or even an HDMI 1.4 chipset. Those features are new features that were included in the new specifications, but they don't require more bandwidth, so they can be implemented on older chips. So what you really do have to think about are the features. You know, what are you missing out on by having HDMI 2.0? Well, even that we can't answer because you could have an HDMI 2.0 chip that refuses to output anything other than 720p. I mean, it's up to the manufacturer what features they support. So like in the case of LG's OLED TVs, they can already output the lossy version of Atmos using a regular audio return channel, not the enhanced audio return channel. Now, it doesn't have the bandwidth to output the lossless versions. It can't output Dolby True HD, so you can't use it as a pass-through. You know, you plug your Blu-ray player into your TV and then try to use the regular audio return channel to pass True HD out to your AV receiver. Can't do that. Doesn't have the bandwidth. You would need the enhanced audio return channel to do that, which is one of the ideas behind the enhanced audio return channel. But just having HDMI 2.1 doesn't even guarantee you that you have enhanced audio return channel. It's up to the manufacturer to implement it. Right. So we kind of need to get away from the spec number thing and just focus on features. And the features are not strictly tied to the HDMI specification, right? You're never going to get 8K going through HDMI 2.0. That much we do know.
Right.
But you can have variable refresh rate going through. We already do on Samsung TVs. You can have auto low latency mode. You can have the quick changing, which goes hand in hand with the variable refresh rate. All of that stuff can be done without an HDMI 2.1 chipset. It's just whether the manufacturer supports it or not.
All right, Joel on Twitter. Joel noticed there had been an update to the Odyssey editor app. He did not take any new measurements. All he did was load up the exact same measurements and configuration he's been using for a while. And to his surprise, the frequency response graphs of his speakers look a bit different now, particularly in the high treble. So what's up with that? And which graph, old or new, actually represents the sound of his speakers? This looks like a smoothing.
So we've got the older one, if you're watching the YouTube video or following along in the pictures that I have a link to. If you even on the behind-the-scenes version, there's now a Flickr album. You can look at the link. But yes, here we have the older version. And so, yeah, we can see in the before measurement, which is the green is the measurement and the red is the prediction of what Odyssey will be able to do with its correction.
Okay.
So we see in the green one, so there's a little bit of wiggliness down in the bass and then a little bit of roll off in the high treble. And now he didn't take any new measurements. He didn't do anything other than do the update to the app, and now the graphs look different, right? The treble no longer looks rolled off. The squiggliness in the bass looks about the same. The predicted correction results look very, very similar. There's essentially no change between what it's predicting it can do. So he's like, what happened, right? I didn't remeasure. Why does the treble response look different?
Oh, wait a second here.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is the first time I thought that the green, I just saw the first picture and I thought the green was the before. No. The first measurement, the thing was after. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of strange. Right. Did they change the scale?
Well, I mean, they put some extra things in there. I mean, they changed the look, right? They gave it a little bit of a new interface look, but I mean, clearly you're looking at this roll off in the high treble on the green, and then no longer in the green on the after results. And he didn't remeasure, he didn't enter any new data. So how could it have changed like that?
It looks like it's extended. The top end measurement is extended somewhat. If you look at the 10K line, right, and you look at the other line, because if you imagine that there were the 101 and 10K are all those hard white lines, then the top measurement actually looks like it stops the first line in from the 10K, which is I would imagine be about 12 or 15 or whatever it is.
Something,
yeah. So maybe they just extended the bottom graph a bit.
It could be that. I have a suspicion, though. This hasn't been confirmed to us by Odyssey or anything like that, but I have a little bit of a suspicion, though. And that is, so when you're looking at this graph, you're not seeing all the measurements that were taken. This is an average, right?
There's always smoothing that goes on with these things.
Smoothing. It's an average. They've taken the cumulative measurements. You got to remember that Odyssey is also taking measurement of the direct sound and what reaches the microphone through reflected sound, and they're doing a whole bunch of calculations. So this is not showing you everything. It's not showing you all the data that Odyssey is working with. This is a one little snap of an averaging of the frequency response. And in general, you will always see a roll off in the treble when you show that accurately, just because treble is much more directional, and treble tends to be disrupted or lose energy much more easily because it just, these tiny little wavelengths are, bouncing off of any item in your room, whereas the bass will just wrap around any item in your room and be affected hardly at all. But the treble, as you move off axis, the amount of energy that reaches the microphone will go down as well. So you take your 8 different measurements, moving it around, and some of those are going to be off axis. And when you average it all together and show it as one cumulative graph, you're going to see a roll off in the treble. Well, I will bet you dollars to donuts, now that you have this Odyssey editor app and you can manually change the target curve, that some people looked at that and went, oh, I'm losing treble. I better manually bump up the EQ in my treble to try and make that a flat line. And some people probably busted some tweeters doing that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I will bet you that has happened, that people looked at that graph, went, why am I seeing a treble roll off, don't fully understand it, and manually boosted up. I'm betting they just said, let's just change the graph so people don't do that anymore. Again, hasn't been confirmed, but that's my speculation, because that would make a lot of sense to me to prevent people. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why Odyssey never used to show you the measurements.
Right.
They're like, you're not going to understand all the stuff that we measured, and there's no way to show it in an easily digestible format. Compressing it all down to one snapshot graph, it doesn't give you the full picture, and it can get you in trouble if you don't know that.
The other thing, I mean, I guess one thing I'm sure they discussed this too. If that is truly the case, then having a target line, which is, this is the optimal line that we're looking for and showing how it's basically ends up being, straight through what their new thing is doing might be something that would be beneficial, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, asking which one of these was an accurate representation of his frequency response, the answer is neither. Neither of them is an accurate representation. It's a combination to give you a rough idea.
Right. Yeah. Or they're both equally accurate.
Yeah.
You could look at it that way.
Equally inaccurate. Yeah, that's right.
So Kevin is currently running a 3.2 setup, but he already owns a pair of self-powered Emotiva. Air Motive. That's the thing I'm trying to say. Emotiva Air Motive speaker. So we'd like to know if there's a wireless speaker kit we recommend that he can use those as surrounds without running additional wires. He'd like a wireless receiving unit for each speaker as opposed to connecting both surround speakers to a single stereo wireless receiver. He already uses a Dayton wireless kit to send the signal to his PC2000 sub. This wireless receiver does have pre-out, so the connection to the transmitter does not need to be regular speaker wire. What do we recommend? Don't we do the what's the name of the company? The
Outlaw
one.
Outlaw Audio. We like that one. It's got a nice form factor. It's got a rock solid wireless signal.
It's kind of expensive though, right?
It's a little bit more expensive. And to do the thing, so it can send its signal from one transmitter to, in fact, up to 4 receiving kits. But the kit that you buy for $130 gives you 1 transmitter and 1 receiver. Both of them are stereo. Okay. But that doesn't help if you want to physically put a receiver beside each surround speaker. Now, you can separately purchase additional receiving units for $65 a piece. So, right there, you're looking at $200 to do the Outlaw audio solution. So there are less expensive ones. SVS, they have their Prime Wireless kit. I forget how much that one costs, because whenever I look things up, now that I'm in Canada, they don't show me the US prices anymore. So, but that one is a little, but there is Dayton's from Parts Express, which is the very same idea. And again, that kit from Dayton will come with 1 transmitter and 1 receiver. That's only $70 for the single transmitter and receiver from Dayton, but then you can buy additional receiving units for the Dayton. This is their Wavelink one that they sell on Parts Express, and additional receiving units are $32. So for $100, there, half the price, you could do the Dayton version. So he already has a Dayton one. It's a little bit older one that they don't sell anymore. The new Wavelink is the updated model that they're selling on Parts Express. But he already has one of the older Dayton ones that he's using just for his subwoofer. So he would now have 2 transmitters, right? He'd have 1 transmitter that's just for his subwoofer signal. He'd have a second transmitter that's for his left and right surround speaker signal. And then he'd have 1 receiver that's just for his subwoofer, as it is already. And then 2 receivers that are linked to the transmitter that's sending his surround speaker signal. It should work in that it has multiple frequencies it can use, and it automatically tries to find the frequency with the least amount of interference on it. But as we were talking about earlier with Steve, if you're in an area or you have a ton of wireless devices in your house, it is possible to disrupt that wireless signal. So I'd almost say give the less expensive one a try, and if you have some audio dropouts, maybe try the Outlaw, because we know that one is quite solid in its wireless connection, but twice the price.
It looks like the SVS is a single transmitter to a single receiver.
So they don't sell additional receiving units?
Not that I can see right now, but I'm still kind of looking around. But they are it's 120 for the pair there.
For the pair. So that's the same price then as the Outlaw.
Right.
So, yeah. So basically, we'd either go with the Outlaw that we know for about $200 total, because you're getting 2 receiving units, or try the Dayton first. It'd be about $100 to get both. So, yeah, transmitter and 2 receivers there.
Well, having a wireless transmitter...
We already answered that one. So.
Oh, we did? Okay. Yeah. Odyssey audio setup will account for any latency in the wireless signal, correct? Yeah, it'll take into account as distance.
That's right. It'll say it's about 10 feet farther away than it physically is.
Yeah, and that's just for the delay there.
Yep.
Brian is currently using an Epson 3020 projector. He's considering upgrading to a JVC X790 or maybe even the new genuine 4K NX5. God, dude, can I just call him like Helen or something? Going strictly by the specs, his current Epson claims to output more than 2300 lumen versus 1800 or 1900 claimed by the JVCs. But he knows the actual lumens is always much lower than what the specs say. So first, why is that? It's so confusing to have the lumens listed in the specs, but then the reviews always talk about the calibrated lumen output being much lower. And sometimes a projector with a lower lumen spec is actually brighter than a projector with a higher lumen spec in real life. So how's a person supposed to compare? Well, I mean, it really, when you calibrate something, what you're calibrating to is the black levels, how dark you can get it to make the black.
The white point, making sure that white is actually 6,500 Kelvin instead of some crazy, 88,000 number that it often is.
So when you take this thing and you open it up to, as bright as it can possibly get, well, then, the lumens are going to be askew because you're not taking into account all the things it requires in order to be able to hit the calibrated specs that it's supposed to do. So when you calibrate it, you lose lumens, and depending on how capable the projector is, and some of the other technical features of it, you're right. The lumens is a very misleading spec to be looking at. I cannot talk today. I think I lost too much blood when I went to the doctor. I had to go get a blood draw today for some reason. So I feel like maybe that's it.
And you'll also find that quite often projectors that are like specifically targeted at home theater, their specified lumen count will be closer to the calibrated lumens than a business class projector where they're just listing the brightest it can possibly be.
Because they're going to be putting that a lot of times in a brightly lit room, and color accuracy and dark levels and whether white is white or blue is blue or green is green, they don't care. They just want to be able to have it be seen in a brightly lit room. So actually being able to put out 5,000 lumens, they're like 5,000 lumens, but the blues will be messed up. Who cares? Put it up on the wall.
But, like in the case of Epson, they've often found that you can actually get more lumens out of it than is even specified, but if it's one of their dedicated home theater models, because they spec'd it at something closer to what the calibrated lumens will be. So how are you supposed to know? Well, really the best thing you can do is go to a place like Projector Central or Projector Reviews, because they review almost all the projectors that you'll probably be interested on a home theater basis, and they will always list what the calibrated lumens were. It's a little bit more digging you have to do. It's not as easy as just looking at spec sheets, but that's probably the safest thing to do, because they will always calibrate it for a home theater purpose and tell you how many lumens it actually got.
Well, it's just, to me, lumens are like watts in receivers.
Yeah.
And
it's a theoretical maximum.
They'll tell you, some number, 960 watts in our home theater in the box. I'm like, well, I'll tell you right now, 60 of those watts are in that that thing they're calling a subwoofer. I can tell you that right now. Whatever the remainder is in there. But this is reading the reviews is the way to go. And I feel the same way about receivers. I don't look at receivers for wattages. I look at the features.
What does
and
it even
else.
matter? I mean, they all say the same number anyway, and they're all within like 10 or 20 watts of each other.
And I feel the same way about projectors and lumens. I don't really look at lumens. I look at other things when I'm reading the reviews, I'm the same way. I want to know, how good did they perform the black levels? How good did they handle color, the white color and everything else. I'm not really worried that much about how many lumens it puts out. Of course, I have a dedicated room I can darken. And if you do as well, then what do you care? So his screen's 120 inches and his room is completely light controlled. As I said, why are you looking at lumens? So he has no doubt either of the JVCs would be fine in pitch blackness, but he does like to have some ambient lighting when his friends are over watching a football game. His Epson handles that nicely. Will the JVCs be able to handle that scenario too? Yeah, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. You're talking about some ambient lighting. You're not talking about and we're going to have the fluorescence on at the same time, right?
Well, I mean, and if it looked that bad, you'd turn the lights down, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean, Projector Central, they measured both of these. The 3020, they measured in so they call it like a bright room mode, right? So this is not literally the brightest it could possibly be with horribly blown out colors, but it's not the most accurate either, right? They will also tell you what it can do in its most accurate. They call it a bright room mode for exactly this type of scenario. A little bit of ambient lighting. You want to have some friends over, watch some sports, but not have the colors, completely off whack and garish. The 3020, when they put it into that mode, gave it about 1,700 lumens, just shy of 1,700 lumens, and the JVCs that you're looking at were just over 1,600 lumens.
Ooh.
Very, very close to one another and imperceptible to the human eye. So the
clearly
answer is
a deal breaker.
Totally fine if you get one of the JVCs.
Steve is tempted by a recommendation of RBH Impressions Elite Series speakers. He definitely wants to audition them, but they do have their impedance listed at 6 ohms rather than the more common 8 ohms of most other speakers. Is there anything to be concerned about when just a regular AV receiver is going to be powering them? Most of the time, when I see 6 ohms, I am not concerned about it at all. But when RBH says it, I'm like, yeah, you guys are just being conservative. Just put 8 ohms like everybody else. Anybody else who made these speakers would have put 8 ohms on them. RBH is
they would have put
man.
Compatible with 8 ohm receivers thing that some people put in there, which is entirely true, but
but everything's compatible, as long as you don't play it very loud. But that's exactly what's happening. They're like, oh well, it technically dipped down to 6 ohms, so we have to put 6 ohms.
Well, it technically dipped down to about 4 ohms on those, about 4.2 ohms on those, which is still higher than what a lot of other speakers, even ones rated at 8 ohms nominal, will often dip down to 3.2 ohms. No, the RBHs are a very easy to drive load that any AV receiver will be able to handle. No worries on that front at all.
Yeah. So the RBH speakers are rear ported, and he'd like to use a false wall setup. So how far away do the speakers need to be from the wall? If you're talking about the actual wall or the false wall.
So he's got a physical front wall, and there's got to be some distance between that wall and the back of the speaker. How much does that need to be?
I usually like to. for a bookshelf speaker, I'd say 6 inches
Sure.
is probably about, a good rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could probably get a little bit closer. Further away is better, but for me, I'd be comfortable with 6 inches.
Yep. So I talked to RBH. They said 4 inches minimum is what they say, and
Okay.
8 inches or more is what they recommend.
All right. Well, there you go.
So
6 is fine.
There you go. If you put it 4 inches away, you're going to get a little bit of boundary reinforcement. You can take care of that with EQ. If you can put them 8 inches away, that's what they recommend. But hey, anywhere in that range, you'll be fine.
All right. Carl and Michael were both interested in hearing our reaction to Gene's from Audioholic's expensive audiophile cables really do sound better YouTube video. I gotta hope I didn't watch it because I didn't get the email, but what was so it was sarcasm, right? Sarcasm?
Oh yeah, hugely so. And yeah. I don't know what he was doing. I mean, like he went through this whole thing within a very sarcastic voice. It was obvious right from the get-go. And then he's like, oh, haha, I clickbaited you. And like, of course, all of what I just said was nonsense. I'm like, okay. And then he went through a bunch of information that has been gone through many times before. It's not bad information, nothing like that, but a whole bunch of stuff. But some of it was outdated. Like you don't see categories listed on HDMI cables anymore.
No,
they don't do that. They have the speeds listed, which we didn't talk about. So it's not wrong information, but it's outdated information. You're not going to find category 1 and category 2 listed on HDMI cables anymore. You're going to see the speeds. I mean, it was, I don't know, going back to the thing that really put Audioholics on the map, I guess, which was debunking overpriced audiophile cables. But I will say it's pretty hypocritical to me when you then go on to say, oh, Kimber cables measure really well, and I'm okay with you paying way more money than you need to for speaker cables because they look really nice. I'm like, yeah, because Kimber is a sponsor of Audioholics, and that's why those ones are okay, but nobody else's are. I wasn't great with that.
Well, I mean, and that's, this comes up on the regular with people who ask me, if you just make it known that you've got sponsors and that, then you don't have to, I mean, everybody's got sponsors. Everybody's got sponsors.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we don't. We don't have sponsors.
We don't
have sponsors. And one of the reasons we don't have sponsors is so that when I say something about something, you're not like questioning, is he recommending SVS because SVS, pays them however much a month to, in sponsorship. I'm like, I just rather not have the sponsor when it comes down to it. I just rather not. And therefore we can say what we want and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, we're also not going to take off any sponsor. We're not worried about losing sponsorship money by being critical of something because we don't have the sponsorship money to start with.
Yeah, and I mean, I am the same way. I mean, I feel like if you want to spend money on cables because they look good and they're going to be on your ground, or you just like cables that look good or whatever, I got no problems with that as long as you get cables that measure well. And Kimber cables, I'm sure, do. I mean, really, it's not that hard to make a cable that measures well.
Yeah,
you
really
literally just buy any old cable and wrap it
reasonably thick copper and put some plastic around it so you don't burn yourself or cut yourself on a thin little razor wire,
and then wrap it in some sort of pretty fabric, and you're off to the races. So I mean, it's not like brain surgery.
Well, I mean, he even said this weird thing where like, oh, the Kimber cable's measured better than 10 gauge zip cord. I'm like, well, if better means lower inductance, then yes, but they have higher capacitance because they're a braided cable. Right. So which one is better? Well, if what you want is a little bit lower inductance because you have a really low impedance speaker where that actually would be marginally beneficial if your speaker wire is about 300 feet long, okay. But that seems like a tough reason to recommend spending hundreds of dollars on speaker cable because they happen to be a sponsor of your website.
And that's why you listen to this podcast. You listen to this podcast because we don't care what cable.
But I thought the whole video was weird. I'm like, I thought when I just saw the title that maybe what he had found was like an actual scientific study where they did like an fMRI machine, right? And they're like, if you know the price of the cable, literally your brain will have different brain waves. And that is not a lie. I mean, I have talked about that. I would actually like to see the better study published about that, specifically about this thing, right? But it's the whole idea of perception can literally change.
Right.
the brain waves, which means you are not lying. If you're like, I heard a difference, we can show you with an fMRI machine that your brain responded differently, even though the cable was identical. If you thought one of them was better, it will be better in your mind. I thought that's what this was going to be going in, but it wasn't. It was just the same information as been shared before. Again, not bad information, but just
Audiologics made
and I
their
thought the whole thing was
reputation on debunking, as you said before, debunking high-end cable. So,
going back to that, that's fine.
Blast from the past sort of thing.
Yeah.
Michael's room is roughly 13 by 13 by 8. Back in 2014, he bought a Sony HW55ES projector, and he uses it with a Screen Innovations 92-inch screen. He loves it, but now he wants to upgrade to 4K and HDR. 13 foot. Wow. Okay, so his wife wants a new couch with a new setup, and the room is not that large, so now he's considering going down in size to a flat panel. He's thinking that will deliver the better HDR experience, and he wouldn't have to deal with projector bulbs in any way. In terms of price to performance, he's done his research, and it seems as though Vizio might be the way to go. He likes the 2019 models, announced at CES, basically bring last year's flagship P quantum performance down to the regular P series this year. So is that the right move, going from a 92-inch projection setup to a Vizio flat panel? I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with this.
Oh, I mean, you can certainly, in a 13 by 13 room, you can certainly have the seating distance that would make this make sense.
Yeah.
No
if you're going
to,
I would still set it up like a traditional theater, and then I would get a stand or a piece of gear to put that TV on that would bring it into the room some, so that you're getting that same field of view that you're used to.
Yeah, you could have one of those 3-in-1 table stands where it has the mount, but the mount is attached to an equipment stand, and therefore you can move it a bit away from the wall.
So he's in the 92-inch screen. I mean, he could still sit 13. He's probably still sitting a couple of feet off of that back wall. I mean, it might be it might be as little as moving his new couch forward a little bit, and then the TV still stays on the front wall just like before. You have more room behind you for maybe a second row of seats, or just a play area for the kids or something like that.
I mean, like, if you keep in mind that 7 feet from a 75-inch screen is a full 44 degree field of view, which is about what you would want for any setup. Now, that is only 7 feet from a 75-inch screen, but maybe, 8 feet from a 75-inch screen, now you're down to a 40 degree field of view, which would be very, very pleasant and seems entirely doable in a 13 by 13 room. Now, if you went for the Screen Innovation screen, that they're known for their ambient light rejecting screens, so it kind of sounds like maybe he has some ambient light in here anyway.
Yeah.
And there is no question when it comes to HDR, it looks vastly different on a flat panel than it does on a projector. Some people have a preference one way or the other, and nobody's wrong about that, but there is no question you are getting much, much brighter highlights from a flat panel. So I mean, I know some people are going to scream, never go away from projection, but it makes sense to me here.
Yeah, I don't
if you're like, I'm sitting 12 feet away and I'm not sitting any closer, then no, that's not the right solution. But
that's right. If you're going to sit on that back wall, no matter what, you should stick with the projector. But if you are able to move that couch, further into the room and get a nice big flat panel, I think in the end, I think you're going to end up saving some money. And
I mean, I think you're going to want the 75-inch though.
Yeah, I think so.
I wouldn't go down to the 65.
If you go 65, you're going to be sitting
6 feet away
in front of the midpoint of that room. You're going to want to sit in order to get that same field of view. So, that's the discussion you really need to have with your significant other. Where do we want to put the couch? Because where we want to put the couch depends on where, what size screen we're going to need for the same field of view. So if we can move the couch up so that it's about, 13 feet away, 8 feet away, well, then you get the 75-inch and, probably end up saving. I mean, especially if you want some true 4K.
And you can watch it with the lights on, no problem.
No problem.
So the only other question is the Vizio P series the right thing to do? Should he go for something else?
75 inches. That's going to be cheaper than that.
It's going to be the least expensive, really good option.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that. I mean, anything else will cost you more. There is better to be had, but it will cost you significantly more. So
Brian got a Denon X3400H in the Apple TV 4K. It seems like Apple TV 4Ks are at the heart of 65% of our questions these days.
Well, CNET actually just put out a thing where they were like, okay, where can you get Atmos and Dolby Vision content? Which services do it and which boxes support it? And it's like, well, the Apple TV 4K does all the services. And like they're even supporting 5.1 and Atmos from Amazon now. And they're the only box outside of the Fire Stick to do that. So it's like, yeah, that does all the things except for Plex and YouTube. And the device that does all the things on Plex and YouTube would be the NVIDIA Shield. So if you get an Apple TV 4K and an NVIDIA Shield, you've covered everything. Yeah.
All right, he was unable to get Dolby Vision to work at all with the Apple TV 4K connected to the Denon, and then the Denon connected to his Vizio M series TV. It works with the Apple TV 4K connected directly to his TV. So is there a setting to adjust in the Denon?
There sure is.
It should be some sort of pass through, though, right? You just turn it to pass through.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a thing, and yeah, I mean Ted commented on this as well, and how annoying it was that. This is like not the default and that you have to go in here. But if you go into the settings of your Denon, under the video section, there is a sub menu in there that says 4K signal format. And by default, that is set to standard, which limits you to 420 8-bit. And that ain't going to get you Dolby Vision. You have to manually switch that to enhanced, which then allows you to get through 444 12-bit signals. Which is Dolby Vision could use all the way up to that. So yeah, you do have to change in the Denon the 4K signal format to enhanced. You will also want to make sure that your television's HDMI inputs have been set to, it's often called Ultra HD Deep Color. That's often what it's called. I think the Vizios have a slightly different name, and actually there was a link to it's a little bit older now, but it was talking about how to get it HDR working with your game system, but it's still applicable. And yeah, they call it HDMI Color Subsampling Enhanced. Thank you, Vizio.
It rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
Sure does. But I mean, he said it already worked when he just plugged the Apple TV 4K directly into TV, so that probably is turned on.
Okay.
But just make sure that it is, and make sure that the enhanced is turned on to the 4K thing inside of the Denon. Yeah.
All right. Chris built himself. Oh, speaking of Atmos. So last week we talked about Netflix and how you can get Atmos Netflix if you upgrade to the highest level of Netflix through the Xbox One.
Yeah.
So I did that. I upgraded my Netflix, and then I found some Atmos content, and I verified that all my speakers were playing sound, which is an unusual experience in this home theater, unless you have it on stereo and then you upmix it.
Okay.
So you have to change, at least on the Xbox One, you have to change Netflix's output to be 5.1. It'll say 5.1 in parentheses original. It does not say Atmos. It says Atmos on the little, like when you look at the placard, they'll say, oh, this is in HD and Atmos. All right. But it does not say.
So this is within the Netflix app?
When you're watching the content, you stop the video and you
go to the audio and subtitles thing. Yeah.
It says 5.1 original. That is Atmos. I don't know why, but it's Atmos.
But what did you have your Xbox's system audio settings?
I had to go back and set that to Bitstream out and Atmos.
Atmos, that's right. Which means that your receiver always says Atmos on its front panel, even though the content might not be.
It sometimes says 7.1 channel now.
Oh, really?
It does. Yes.
Oh, yay!
But on top of that, the Netflix content that is not Atmos is once again side surrounds and the back surrounds. So,
but it did put your AV receiver into 7.1 multi-channel PCM in mode.
Yes.
So it did that switch automatically. It didn't say Atmos on the front anymore, because I haven't even bothered to check on my Xbox.
I
I've
actually
got other
have
streaming
not.
boxes.
I have not. I don't remember looking
if it automatically
if it automatically switched. I did notice that when because the only time I really look at my receiver is when everything's powering up, and I noticed that the Xbox is saying when I'm on the home screen, it's saying multi-channel in, which I think it used to say Atmos all the time.
I know for certain it always said, and if you chose bitstream output Atmos, the AV receiver always said it was getting Atmos. That's just
now it sometimes says that.
Okay.
But the side surround's still in the back surrounds because apparently
they cannot
cannot figure that out.
Even Sony got that, and they don't let you change any sound modes once you've chosen one.
Chris built himself a new TV stand. Back when Chris first wrote to us, it was to try and improve his dialogue intelligibility. We wanted him to tilt his center speaker and that acoustic panels behind him, since his seat is pushed right up back against some closet doors. He followed that advice and it helped a lot. And now with this new TV stand and being able to position his speaker, a center speaker below his TV, it has helped even more. He is very happy with the results. So we have some pictures here where, I mean, this is a very narrow room. It's very small, and he's sitting very close to his very large TV.
But we can follow it from the before all the way through, and then things have improved with the addition of acoustic panels and now changing where the speaker center speaker resides.
Yeah, so center speaker is now below his TV inside of his new cabinet. He's got panels behind his front speakers. He's got panels behind his head and panels at least to the left side of his couch. I would imagine there's some to the right side.
There are as well. Yeah, we had those pictures before, but I'm not going to repurpose all of them. But yeah, he's also got a little wedgies under the center speaker there to angle it up just a little bit, since it's now a little bit below. But yes, all of this has led to much better dialogue intelligibility, which was the thing that sparked all of this, and very happy to hear that the results have been good.
He also asked us more recently what we thought he should do, since his Emotiva Fusion 8100 receiver is having HDMI problems. What the heck is the Emotiva Fusion? Did I miss that one?
That's old, man. That's going back many years. But they did
Our advice leaned towards just getting a new receiver. He called Emotiva to check if they might offer an affordable repair, and he was told that they no longer service the Fusion 8100 at all. So a new receiver is it. But Emotiva did say they'll give him $275 in store credit to put towards a future Emotiva purchase, so it was worth the phone call.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to get something than nothing.
Yeah. But since they don't offer a receiver model at the moment, he'll be getting something else, probably a Denon. He'd like to know, what's the difference between Odyssey Multi-EQ XT and the Multi-EQ XT32? He gets the sense that XT32 is better, but why? More filters, more
granular control over smaller intervals between where the frequencies are being changed. Lots and lots of filters in 32
is very good.
It is.
Multi-EQ XT is very good, and what I would consider to be a good enough product, and one that it wasn't that long ago that we were all like, if you got to get an XT, it's amazing. But XT32 is better. And is it significantly better? It's better enough that I think it's important. I'd pay extra for it. You know, I think that you have to at least get XT. If you're gonna spend the money to get a receiver with room correction, and room correction is something that's important to you, XT is the bare minimum I would get. XT32 with sub EQ HT and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so the sub EQ HT is a separate thing, but you will only find it on processors that have XT32.
Right.
So the sub EQ HT is the thing where it can measure two subwoofers independently, give them independent distance and level settings, and then it will sum them together as a mono signal and equalize them together as one, which is exactly the way things should be done on the automated side of process. And we know that Chris does have two subwoofers now, so sub EQ HT could be of some use to you, and you will only get that on ones that have XT32, although having XT32 does not always guarantee that you get sub EQ HT, although these days it more or less does. It was sort of early on that we had a few XT32 models that did not have sub EQ HT. But yeah, I mean, this is basically the price break between, say, an X2500 and an X3500 in Denon's lineup, right? The X3500 gets you XT32, the X2500 gets you XT. So yeah, if you got the one that has XT because it's more affordable and it has all the features you need and you're okay with manually setting up your subwoofers to give you a uniform response, I got no problem with that.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you that XT is not worthwhile. XT32 has that many more filters, and you'll have the sub EQ HT if you want to automatically set up the two subs.
Right. Josh has been given the go-ahead to use a portion of a larger room as a mini home theater area. All you got to do is tell the sound not to leave that area, and you'll be just fine.
Behave. Be good. Be good, bass. Stay in here.
The dimensions of the full room are about 20 by 26 by 8, and that is an enclosed space not open to the rest of the house. So it's not... It's big, but it's not,
it's not,
infinity.
It's not unmanageable. Yeah.
This room has two sliding glass doors, both of which will vibrate when we're done with them. But one of them is permanently locked and never in use. We'll still vibrate it. So his TV can go in front of that glass door. His theater area will be 12 feet wide and 8 feet long in the corner of the larger room. Okay. So it's in the front left corner, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
and the couch will be centered. The sliding glass door will be behind. The left and right speakers will be flanking the display. The rest of the room, it's got like a dining room and entertainment area and everything else. So the sliding glass door behind the TV, it's not. There's two sliding glass doors. One behind the TV, and it's bigger than the whole TV area. It extends past, and then there's another sliding glass door on the right wall of the room, which is actually quite a bit away. The one on the right wall is the only one that's in use. The one behind the TV is never in use.
That's right.
So that's one that stays slow. Okay, so he says he's a recovering audiophile and he sold all of his overpriced gear 15 years ago, but he kept a pair of Silverline Audio SR15 stand-mounted speakers. His seeing distance from eyes to screen will end up being about 7 feet. He's planning on just a 2.2 setup, and this is for 40% movie, 60% games on his Xbox One X. Any reason these Silverline speakers ought to be replaced? Coming from his audiophile background, he's used to the belief that some speakers are specifically designed for home theater, while other speakers are specifically designed for music. So, yeah, no. His were music speakers. So should he get home theater speakers instead? No, you should have good speakers. Good speakers can play all the sounds, no matter what. Yeah, the speaker is unaware of whether or not it is playing a movie or a music. And I would have to say that I don't know if you noticed it, but there's some music in some movies.
It's remarkable how the frequencies between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz are used by both music and movies.
Yeah.
So if these speakers are good for sound, they are also good for sound.
So for those of you that don't know, because I did not know, so I'm clicking on it here. These are rated at 8 ohms, 90 dB sensitivity at 1 watt, 1 meter, rated down to 40 hertz, minus 3 dB, which
it's a quite standard looking two-way bookshelf speaker design.
I don't know if it's quite going down to 40 hertz, but okay. But it'll definitely get past 80, which is what we care about. So this is a very, to me, just glancing on it, looks like a very reasonably designed and spec'd speaker.
7 feet away, maybe 8 at the most.
Right. Yes, I think it'll be
problem.
Fine. Yeah, this will be fine.
Absolutely fine with these. Yeah, and you said he's going 2.2 setup, so we're not worried about, these are older speakers, so we're not worried about trying to find the matching center or matching surrounds or something like that. It's like, nah, these are totally fine. No reason to replace them whatsoever.
So what should you get for a display? This is not a light-controlled room, and again, a 7-foot seating distance in games as a high priority. His max budget is $4,000 for the display, and he was considering the 82-inch Samsung Q6FN. One day somebody's going to forget and they're going to name it like the Q9FU, and I'm going to be like, finally, finally a name I can remember.
Well, Panasonic had that EZ900.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Should he hold off and wait for the new 2019 models with HDMI 2.1? All right, so first of all, no. But second, let's talk a little bit about the 7-foot seating distance. Now, I don't know what your experience has been in the past as far as large screens and games. He didn't say what kind of games he's playing. He could be playing The Binding of Isaac for all I know.
Right.
He could be up there playing, puzzlers and Tetris or something. I don't know what he's playing. But if you're playing first-person shooters or anything along those lines, and you have not done it on an 82-inch screen 7 feet away for a couple of hours at a time, you need to try it first. You need to figure it out because it can be nausea-inducing. So I'm going to be very cautious here and tell you, be extremely sure that you are confident that the screen that you are getting is not going to be so big that you can't play on it.
I mean, this is odd for us saying, oh, you might actually want to get a smaller screen. But yeah, I'm in agreement here. I mean, mainly because 75-inch flat panels, which are quite easy to find at all different price ranges, from 7 feet away, like I said, that's about a 43-degree field of view. And I wouldn't have a problem with that. I sit like 6 feet away from a 65-inch, which is not a dissimilar field of view. And I find that perfectly fine. But I wouldn't want to go a whole lot bigger.
Yeah.
Then it starts to get beyond your range of it where you have to start either moving your head or moving your eyes around to see the screen.
I was actually leaning towards a 65-inch. I got to be honest with you. I mean,
Oh.
at 7 feet, I know that's a smaller field of view,
It
but
is.
75, I think, is about as large as I
Yeah.
would feel comfortable recommending here.
Which again, I mean, it sounds crazy. Like you can afford an 82-inch, but we're actually saying 75. But it's 7 feet. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to have to move your eyes around to see things on your screen.
Yeah.
I am a little bit further back than you are, and I've got like a 92-inch screen.
That's right.
And I kind of have to move my eyes a little bit, but not much. I mean, I could see 90% of the screen without having to. If something's in a corner, I might miss it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I can see everything. And playing games for me has never been an issue. I don't play a huge number of first-person shooters anymore. I used to, but I haven't in quite some time. But I've never had nausea issues. I have played with people who do. So, you have to know your limitations. And I think 82 is just too big.
But more than that, there's the choice of television, right? So who's going to be doing variable refresh rate? Because obviously that's the thing we're worried about here.
Right.
Variable refresh rate. Xbox One X can do that. We want a TV that supports it. Gaming is a high priority. More use of gaming than movies, so I get all that. Samsung right now is your only choice. And you could get the 75-inch Q8 FN for, I think, $200 more than the 82-inch Q6. The huge difference there, the Q6 is edge lit. The Q8 is full array local dimming.
Oh, well, that right there is worth the cash as far as I'm concerned.
Very much worth it. And for movies, which are still 40% of your viewing, you said, for movies, there's no question because the black bars are actually black on the Q8 FN. The black bars are not black on the Q6 FN.
Right.
Which
you don't want, I mean, do you really want an edge lit TV for gaming even?
I mean, he was doing it because you can get the 82-inch within his budget. That was the reason. So there is an 82-inch Q8 FN. It's about $4,300. So it's $4,000 was the absolute max. $3,000 would be better, which is around where the 82-inch Q6 is. And I mean, if that's what you need is that huge size, I'm not going to say the Q6 is a bad choice. It's just that if you have the option of getting a Q8 with the full array local dimming, I'm like, you got to do it. You got to go that way. And the 75-inch is affordable. So I would point you right there. Who else is doing variable refresh rate? Well, LG is doing it with their 2019 models. Now, you're not getting a 77-inch OLED for $4,000.
No.
So that's not a consideration. And I wouldn't get one of the LG LCDs because they use the IPS panels with horrible black levels all the time. So I think it's Samsung. Is there any reason to wait for their 2019 models where their 2019 4K resolution models aren't getting HDMI 2.1 anyway? But they have variable refresh rate, which is the feature that we care about, not the HDMI specification, the feature, variable refresh rate, and they have that on their present models, and they're on sale because it's just after the Super Bowl, and you can get the 75-inch Q8 FN for like just over $3,000. That's the one to get.
He says the only way he could add surround speakers would be if they were completely invisible flush in ceiling speakers. So he was strongly leaning towards keeping this a 2.2 setup. Do we agree? Or should he be adding more speakers? If you are this much into gaming and you're going to be not using headphones for it, which honestly, if you're really into gaming and you I mean, I don't know.
You get an Astro gaming headset, and then off you go. Yeah.
Right. I don't see why you wouldn't want to have surround sound or something more accurate. How many times have I played Left 4 Dead 2 with Rob, where I could pinpoint within my home theater where the attacks were coming from because of surround sound?
Yeah.
Not having it seems like a huge
disadvantage.
It's a disadvantage for you playing with other people because they're going to be able to hear things that you can't. In which case, so if you're going to stick with 2.2, you need headphones for your gaming. If you're not going to be, if you're doing the kind of gaming I'm talking about, if you don't do that type of gaming or whatever, then okay, 2.2 or basically front, left, and right and two subs is fine. I still think it's I mean, surround sound makes a huge difference in movies. Yeah. So I would want it for movies.
So even though the only option would be in ceilings, in this case, we're saying, it might actually be worth it. even though they're in ceilings? Because at least, at least it tells you, yeah, that's a sound coming from behind me instead of in front of me. Which gaming wise,
behind me and to the right a little bit, but behind me on the left a little bit. I mean, it tells you which direction to turn.
It's enough, right? Yeah. So I mean, even though overall we're not huge fans of in-ceiling surrounds because it's not really ideally where they would be placed, when a priority is gaming, just being able to get some directionality is kind of, I can dig that. I think that's good logic.
So the subwoofers can't be too large, and he'd like to keep the price for a pair of subs to under $1,000. Okay. Yeah, so would I. He was thinking dual RSL Speedwoofer 10S. Would those be better than a single $1,000 high output sealed sub like the SVS SB3000? This is one of those times when you really kind of put us in the bad place, because it's the only times that we say it's better to get the single sub and with the better output, and because it sounds to me, especially if it's for gaming, mostly you're not gaming with people in the room, so you care about a seat, which is the seat that you're sitting in while you're gaming.
It seems like a distinct possibility that there is one seat on this couch that you care a lot about, and you care much less about the seats to either side. That seems like a possibility.
In which case, I am okay with you getting a single subwoofer with higher output, and then placing it all the places that you possibly can, and seeing how it sounds in your seat.
Yep.
And then using Odyssey or whatever to dial in as much as you can. To me, that's the direction I would push you towards. This particular room, I got to scroll back up to go look at the picture.
Oh, I put it down here. Oh, the picture. Okay, but yeah, 20 by 26 by 8, which is just shy of 4,200 cubic feet. That is a large room. It's not what audioholics would call an extreme room in their baseaholics ratings, but it is definitely in the 3,000 to 5,000 cubic feet range. That is designated as a large room. RSL Speedwoofer 10S's. They wouldn't be terrible, but not really what I would choose for this room.
Right.
I could see getting by with a pair of SB2000s. It might not get you full pressurization, but if you need the small size, I could see you getting it. But that's not going to be $1,000. That's going to be $1,500 to do a pair of SB2000s.
But we just saved him $1,000 on the display, so he's got some money to burn.
There's that, but the single SB3000 here, output-wise, that is an appropriate choice for your room size. Extension-wise, is going to be fantastic. And then size-wise, you're going with the smaller sealed box. Yeah, in this instance, I can dig the single SB3000.
Yeah, you've got that corner, the front left corner. You could maybe place it on either side of your couch. Yeah. Those are the two locations that look most reasonable to me.
Do a subwoofer crawl. You put the sub in your seat, you play a bass tone on repeat, and you find the spot in your room where you at least don't have a gigantic dip anywhere in that bass sweep. The rest we can sort of fix with equalization, but if you have a gigantic dip somewhere in the bass sweep, do not put the subwoofer there.
Yeah. Should you worry at all about EARC or extended? Is that what it's enhanced? I always get that wrong. Audio return channel. If he's keeping the setup to 2.2, should he plug all of his sources into his TV and then output the audio to a stereo receiver or a preamp via ARC? Or should he get a regular surround sound receiver even though he'll only be using 2.2 channels? He's struggling with this decision and also wants to know if either DRAC Live or DTS Virtual X would be worth it. This is a very, very easy decision.
Okay.
For me, this is very easy. It used to be not so easy.
Right.
But the fact that you're not going to use some of these channels, it's not like you threw the money away, because what you're buying the receiver for is not those extra channels. And in fact, it's not for anything other than being able to route all your signals, power your speakers, however many you have, and room correction.
Mm-hmm.
And that room correction is the linchpin, because find me a stereo sound receiver that has multi-Q XT32 or anything like it.
Thinking that would be nice to do 4.2 here.
Yes, we are thinking that too. Yeah.
So surround sound receiver. I'd point you X3400H from Accessories for Less.
Yep.
That's what you need. You don't need one that can do 11 speaker Atmos. That's what I'm talking about. But that gets you XT32 and gets you all the power you would need for 7 feet away. There you go. X3400H, Accessories for Less.
Yeah. So what about this DRAC Live? DRAC Live is just another room correction, right?
It's another room correction. Some people say it's more sophisticated, more advanced.
Yeah, whatever.
You don't really need it. Not for this.
No. Robert Robert is building a dedicated home theater in his basement. He'd like to bounce some ideas off us. The room will be enclosed and windowless, like a dungeon. 14 by 20 by 8, which is around the same size as my room. And soundproofed with double drywall and green glue construction. His wife's one request is that the look be kept clean with minimal visible speakers and wires. He's into DIY, so he's planning on constructing a false wall up front with an acoustically transparent screen and acoustically transparent fabric to cover the rest to hide the DIY Sound Group Fusion 8 speakers and acoustic treatments up front. The entire front should be an acoustic treatment, but okay, let's go with that. Just the entire front wall should be just anything that
insulation along the physical front wall, false wall in front of it. Perfect.
Anything that cannot be seen should be covered in insulation, as far as I'm concerned. He wants 2 rows of seats, so with the false wall, his primary row will have a viewing distance of 12 feet, 13.5 feet from the physical front wall, with the back row close to the back wall. If by close you mean on, okay.
Well, not quite. I mean, he got about a foot.
Basically on. So do we think that what do we think is the ideal screen size? He's planning on using Seymour AV's DIY center stage XD material. I was thinking 135 inches diagonal. From 13 feet.
12 feet from eyes to
12 feet. Oh,
13 and a half to the physical front wall, but
that seems a little large to me. But I mean,
that's a 45-degree field of view right there.
I mean,
12 feet, 135.
Yeah,
perfect.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, is that what you like? Yeah, if that's what you like. So he wants to upgrade his current BenQ HD 1075 projector to a 4K HDR capable model, but he doesn't want to go nuts on the price. JVC RS 540 would be at the very max of his budget, which is what? How much is it?
$4,000, 3,800 from AV Science. Yeah.
While the Epson 5040 UB would be a much more comfortable price point, which is what, about 2,000?
It's down to $2,000 now. Yeah, they are clearing them out, and the 5050 must be coming soon. They are clearing out those 5040s.
He can have the zero ambient light. He can have zero ambient light in his room. So would the JVC be worth it, or would that money be better spent elsewhere?
It's worth it. It's worth it.
When you have a completely light controlled room, where black levels become most important is when you can really see them. And when black becomes truly black in a room where there's ambient light of any kind,
right,
you can't see it. You can't tell the difference. But when black becomes truly black and your room's black, you're like, I can no longer see my hand in front of my face.
Yep.
That is black.
It's worth it. What I would say, because if you're struggling with $3,800, and I don't blame anybody who is, that's a lot of money to spend on a projector. But I would give AV Science a call because they might still have one of the step-down models. Maybe it's the 440, right? AKA the X590, or maybe even going back a year. Maybe they have an RS 420 or 520 even at a slightly lower price, because the 420s were definitely selling at $3,000 when you could still find them quite readily online, but you can't really find them anymore. They are a discontinued model, but some retailers still have them, and AV Science would be one of the retailers that might still have access to those older or step-down JVC models, because the step even from a 5040 UB to an RS 440 is still worth it. And if the price difference is what used to be $2,500, now about $2,000, so we are talking a $1,000 price increase, but that's a lot less than an $1,800 price increase and might make it more comfortable. The only other thing would be to maybe see what the 5050 offers, but it's still an LCD projector. It's not going to get close to the JVCs. It's just going to be able to do 4K at 60 hertz, which is the one thing that the 5040 UB can't do that we would like it to do. So yeah, I think the JVC is worth it.
Part of the front wall has his garage on the other side. He's got a friend who is a bass head, and he's suggesting an infinite baffle subwoofer. Robert was thinking a pair of ported 18-inch subs himself, but listening to us, he knows would probably be suggesting just a pair of PC 2000s. You are 100% right.
Yep.
Yeah, you are.
That would be
100%
more
right,
than sufficient in 14 by 20 by 8.
Has he fallen down the rabbit hole on bass? Could he match an infinite baffle sub built into his front wall with an in-room box sub to give him better uniformity, or is all of that overkill? What should he do bass-wise? You should get the PC 2000. You don't have the floor space for what you're talking about as far as getting a pair of 18-inch ported subs. Where are you planning on putting those?
Ported. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he likes DIY. He likes making his own stuff, and I have no problem
Yeah.
in you making some subwoofers that would be comparable to PC 2000s, but you built them yourself and at a lower price. That is not the issue. It's the going really 14 by 20 by 8 is sealed. You don't need this crazy. I mean, there's this thing of like, oh, I've got so much headroom. It's like, yeah, but you are never going to use it. So why spend that much? Why take up that much floor space? Why go that nuts for something you are never going to use, except for the one time you demo it and possibly damage your hearing, and then that's really not worth it.
Right. And the infinite baffle sub, and I'm gonna say this as many times as it takes for people to hear it. It is a terrible idea. It is a terrible. Okay, you have built a room, right? You have built a room that is soundproofed.
Yeah.
Right? Have you not? Now you're going to build an infinite baffle sub, which means that
huge
hole in and maybe multiple, because you might say, oh, if I'm going to put one 18-inch driver in this wall, why don't I put three 18-inch drivers into this wall? Right. Excuse me. And it's just you just basically killed your soundproofing. So let's pretend that wasn't the case, that wasn't going to be an issue. You decide you don't like the uniformity of your bass, and you would like to move your sub. How are you going to move your infinite baffle sub?
Yes.
You cannot.
You really cannot. You have to reconstruct it.
So, no.
Yeah, no, don't do
Just
that.
Don't.
Now, if you want to do, like, I think actually some of the DIY sealed designs in this room make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because you are going to get room gain, given the dimensions of the room, how small, acoustically speaking, your room is. It's not a tiny room, but acoustically speaking, it's a small room. So, yeah, some of the, like, if you want to go nuts, you could go with one of the 15-inch sealed DIY designs. That's going to have so much output and so much extension. A couple, you know what you could do? 4 of them. 1 in each corner. And for your bass head friend who's like infinite baffle or deaf, it's like 4 subs. All right, that's kind of like a good, the thing about 4 subs is even better uniformity. You got seats right on your back wall. It'll actually legitimately help you. So if you just gotta have all the bass, I say 4 sealed subs, 1 in each corner.
I doubt he needs a 15-inch drivers in those things, 12-inch.
Oh no, the 12 would be fine, but we know he wants to overkill. So yeah, dude, don't do the 18s. Don't do infinite baffle.
So in order to soundproof around the HVAC and plumbing and whatnot, he's going to have large soffits about 40 inches wide. He really does not want any speakers hanging below the soffits. And since the idea is to soundproof, he really doesn't want to install any speakers within the soffits either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for
Atmos, infinite baffle.
But yeah, infinite baffle. So for Atmos speakers, he'd be willing to put speakers on the sidewalls just below the soffits or put them on the ceiling, but they would end up only being about 7 feet apart from side to side. Is that too close together for them to be effective? Is it fine? Will it be fine to have them on the ceiling that close together? So he wants what? Speakers? So for Atmos speakers?
Atmos speakers, but they'd be 7 feet apart side to side because they have to be inside of where the soffits will be, and they're quite wide soffits.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I mean,
it's totally fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
In fact, yeah, in Dolby's current Atmos guidelines, they say to have the distance between your Atmos speakers. They still say, if you can, you have them the same distance apart as your front, left, right speakers. But they now put in a thing that say 0.5 to 0.7 of the total width of your room. Yeah. So multiply the width of your room, which is 14 feet, by 0.5 and 0.7, and that's your distance, which is 7 feet. So that's the minimum they would recommend, but hey, you're at the minimum, and that's fine, out to as wide apart as 9.8 feet apart.
Which is about where mine are, because I have a 10-foot couch, and I just basically have it flanking the arms of the 10-foot couch.
So yeah, no, you're fine. Even by Dolby's guidelines, you're fine.
AVRant? I guess.
So.
AVRant got a MiniDSP, and he has been following their guide for using it to EQ subwoofers using measurements taken from Room EQ Wizard. When you go to calculate the correction filters in Room EQ Wizard, the guide says to set the type. I'm sorry. Let me try again. The guide says to set the speaker type to none within the target settings, but AVRant knows that the speaker type can be set to subwoofer via the drop-down menu. Following the guide works just fine. So he's just curious why they specifically say they set the speaker type to none instead of subwoofer. That's probably to give it all of the frequencies, I would guess. But go on, Rob.
Yeah, no, if you set it to subwoofer, it activates the crossover setting. which is basically just a low-pass filter up at the top range. And since the assumption is that your AV receiver will be taking care of the crossover filtering, you don't want cascading crossover filters. Right. So they basically just say, okay, feed the MiniDSP a full range signal, will EQ for the bass portion, but then what's coming out of your AV receiver will already be low-pass filtered by its bass management. Now, you can defeat the crossover settings. If you did select it as the speaker type subwoofer, you can defeat the crossover settings. It's just that, why do that when if you just select none, you don't have those to deal with in the first place? That's all it is. They just don't want cascading crossovers.
Lance. It's Lance H. And every time I see that, I'm like, Lance Hendrickson.
That's right.
That's what's so he's got
knife on a table.
Yeah. All right, sorry. Just geeking out over here. Oh, so I met a woman and her children's name were Summer and River.
Okay.
And I went, "Are you a Serenity fan?" She says, "What's Serenity?" I said, "It's a TV show." And she said, "I don't watch TV." I'm like, weird. So Summer Glau plays River Tam on Serenity, and I'm or Firefly, depending on which one you want to talk about. And I was like geeking out over this thing, and she's just like, "I don't even watch TV." I'm like, okay, well, whatever.
Coincidence.
Lance has an Xbox One X connected to a Marantz SR7012 receiver and an LG OLED, or OLED for short. He used to have an Xbox One S, which seemed to work fine on the audio side of things. Whatever. But ever since he upgraded to One X, he's noticed that it randomly does something weird with the audio signal where it gets way quieter and then the bass vanishes sometimes. If you reset the console, it seems to be fine, and it seems to be tied to the instant on feature. If he turns that off so it does a full shutdown and a full boot up each time, the audio seems to work okay. But that wastes time, and he didn't have the issues with that One S. Any ideas? Microsoft's dumb?
I did some searching, and some other people are having similar problems. They mostly seem to tie it to if you ever do a party chat.
Oh, really?
You do a party chat and it like partially mutes the audio and then it doesn't come back properly.
Right.
So that seemed to be what most people online were talking about. But similar thing, they were saying it's happening with the One X, but it didn't happen with the previous iterations of the original one or the One S.
They either will or won't fix it with a patch. Those are your options.
So you are not alone. And it's not like you made a mistake in the settings or something. It's other people are reporting a similar thing. I don't know what. It's a glitch. It's some kind of weird glitch. Resetting your console seems to be the only way to get it back to normal.
So he tried using the Apple TV 4K. Atmos seemed to sound different coming from the Apple TV 4K versus the Xbox One S or X. He prefers the way Xbox sounds. So is Apple using some sort of different version of Atmos? I'm going to say that maybe the Xbox is screwing it up in some way, and you just are used to it.
I mean, it used to be my guess. That if you set your Xbox to Atmos, everything came. Your AV receiver would say Atmos all the time, and they were doing their like Atmos upmixing inside the console.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to... So, I mean, here's the thing. If you previously set the Xbox to 7.1 uncompressed output, and you fed that into your AV receiver, and then you activated Dolby Surround upmixing, it wouldn't sound the same because sometimes there's no sound in the surround back speakers coming out of the Xbox, which means there's nothing back there to upmix, and no sounds will ever be upmixed into the surround backs because they're already occupied by a 7.1 discrete signal coming out of the Xbox.
of zero sound coming out of it.
Whereas the Apple TV 4K actually does things correctly, which is whatever the source is, that's what gets output of, like whatever the channel count in the original source is, that's what gets output of the Apple TV 4K. Now, preferring the Xbox's built-in upmixing, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. But yeah,
I think this is a really good example of we like what we're used to, and if you try something new, you're like, wow, it sounds different. There's like weird sounds coming from all over the place. So like that. That's because, and I'll be honest with you, like when my surround backs are instead coming out of the, my surrounds are coming out of the surround backs instead of the surrounds, it is much more dynamic as far as the sound. I mean, it's like way back there. You're like, oh my god, there's sounds way. What is going on? That's way back there. You're like, oh, okay. Well, this sounds very dramatic when something like that happens, but it's not correct.
Not what it's supposed to be.
It's not right.
Yeah.
And just because it's more dramatic, it's like speakers that have are known for being very bright. When you listen to them for a very short period of time, you're like, wow, these are so amazing and they sound so powerful. And then after 2 hours, you're like, wow, I need an Advil and a nap. But, you know, I would say give the Apple 4K TV another shot there, Haas.
And also, I mean, sometimes your AV receiver is set to automatically upmix, or it's not set to automatically upmix. So, you know, coming out of the Xbox One, if you set it in Atmos and it's always outputting Atmos, then you're always going to have some sounds probably coming out of your overhead speakers, whereas the Apple TV 4K, it's up to your AV receiver to take care of that.
It depends on what, and we didn't even tell us what he was watching. It could have been, you know.
But yeah, it could be a listening mode change that would help you there too.
Bob in the Philippines. First up, Bob just wants to say that he appreciates all the help we've provided. He began his journey of upgrading all of his outdated home theater gear 2 years ago and came across so many websites, YouTube channels, and podcasts, but he mostly followed our advice, getting SVS Ultra speakers in his 2000 series sub, Blue Jeans cables, and LG OLED. Plus the picture settings we recommended and the NVIDIA Shield running Plex has completely changed the way he plays all his media. He says he couldn't be happier with the results.
Yay!
Regarding his NVIDIA Shield, he used to power everything off. He is used to. He is used to. Okay.
There's an apostrophe S.
There it is. He is used to powering everything off when he isn't using it. So he normally goes into the Shield settings and does a full power down rather than using the sleep function. But he's noticed that when he turns the Shield back on, it seems kind of sluggish for nearly 15 minutes. It works, but it's a bit slow to respond to button presses, and sometimes there's a little stutter or hitches when navigating the menus or opening apps. After about 15 minutes, it seems to have fully booted up and runs very smoothly and responsively. So why is that? And what's the real difference between powered off and sleep? Should he get in the habit of just putting it in sleep mode instead? I'm going to hazard a guess. And my guess is that it has to do with indexing or making sure, looking at all the media and making sure it's all where it is and that there's nothing new and there's no updates that have to be done, and all the stuff that it might do while it was asleep is now having to be done on boot up. Yeah,
that's more or less it. I mean, it's Android. It's your phone. I mean, I know it's Android TV, but it's if you look at all the processes that are going on in the background, it's a huge list. It's a huge list of processes, and every time you fully shut down and fully boot up, it respools all those processes. And yeah, it takes a while. And yeah, if you're doing Plex, it re-indexes your whole library and all that. So it's accessing all of your network storage and making sure everything's there, seeing if there's any new metadata and all that. So yeah, it's a whole process that's going on, and it'll take care of the majority of that, any updates as well, if you just put it in sleep mode. And also, it's like your phone. You don't power down your phone completely when you're not using it.
You just press the button and it puts it to sleep.
Click the little lock button, and that's essentially sleep mode. So yeah, it's using a little bit of power in sleep mode, right? Fully off, it's not using any power at all. So if you're super saving electricity, it does that. But the sleep mode uses very little power. Was it 0.3 watts, I think?
I would 100% put this thing in sleep mode, dude.
Oh, gotcha. I mean, that's the way they intend you to use it.
Yeah, I mean, it is
certainly for convenience.
Right. It's not just a convenience thing. It's a... we built this with this in mind so that all this stuff can go on when you're not around. And we don't have to worry about it.
I mean, you're not breaking anything by powering it all the way off and powering it all the way on.
No.
Exactly what you described. Yeah.
Infinite Gary. Infinite Gary says, some movies have subtitles, or perhaps you just want to turn subtitles on sometimes. Gary has noticed that when the movie is in HDR, the subtitles are annoyingly bright. Far brighter than the subtitles on a regular 1080p Blu-ray. Why?
I don't know. I've noticed that too. My parents use subtitles all the time, and it's absolutely true. On the
the whites are whiter, that's why.
And they seem to have programmed it at about 400 nits for the subtitles, and it's way too bright. It hurts your eyes. Yeah. I don't know why. It's terrible.
So is there a way to make the subtitles dimmer? I'm guessing no.
Nope. And that would be a great feature. Man, I would like that feature, but nope, not that I've found.
And is there a way to turn HDR off but still have the wide color and 4K resolution? You should be able to have 4K. I don't know about wide color.
Yeah, I mean, on the Ultra HD Blu-ray players that do HDR to SDR conversion.
Yeah.
So your Oppos, your Panasonics, the Sony X800 or X700, right? So they can convert the HDR down to SDR. So that'll do that, and you can retain the wide color when you do that. However, the subtitles are still going to be bright. Because since they were programmed at like 400 nits, yeah, they're going to be down to the maximum of SDR, but subtitles are not normally 100 nits on the SDR disc. And they're going to be like 100 nits now. because it's going to be like make it as bright as you can because the signal originally was requesting 400. So they're still going to look too bright, even if you turn the HDR off and convert it to SDR.
So we mentioned something about the newest 2019 LG OLEDs being able to turn off the white subpixel and only use the red, green, and blue subpixels. Did we mention that? I don't remember.
I mentioned it because it is one of the things that they talked about at CES 2019.
So how will that impact the look of 4K HDR Blu-rays?
Little teeny highlights won't be quite as bright.
I mean, that's pretty much what it does. So
yeah, it'll top out at about 400 nits now instead of 800, but all the colors will be accurate within those 400 nits, but the little specular highlights won't be quite as bright. That's about it.
There you go. Jack has a TV set up in a wide open family room. The TV and a pair of speakers are in an entertainment cabinet, and the seats are about 14 feet away. His current speakers are wall mounted above the TV, only about as wide as the TV itself. So it's the cabinet thingy is open, like there's no back to it. So they're mounted to the wall above the TV, and then there's a thing going over the top of it that has like pictures and crap in it.
The shelving, yeah.
It doesn't need to be okay. He knows it's bad placement, but moving them is out of the question.
There you go.
You'd be surprised how many questions I can ask that would involve you moving these things.
I was looking at those shelves to either side of the TV, and I'm like, those could hold speakers, but okay, we'll take it as wrote.
Take the baby picture on the right, the baby picture on the left, and relocate them to where that plant is, and get rid of the plant. All right. It doesn't need to be loud, but this family wants voices to be clearer and easier to understand. Well, you see here, we have a problem. The problem is you want something that requires you to move the speakers, but you don't want to move the speakers. Okay. Mm-hmm. He was thinking a pair of Q150s might be a good option. Are there any other speakers for around $300 or less that we would recommend more highly? They're being powered by an Onkyo RC160 receiver. Dude, it literally is move the speakers. That is literally the solution to this problem.
Yeah. Yeah, although I mean, I don't know what speakers they are. I can't tell from the
I don't think
photo.
It matters. You put it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You put anything in there and they're gonna get hampered. I mean, if
they're gonna get hampered, but I mean it is possible for some speakers to be better than others.
If you could take and just put like a thin layer of insulation like lining the wall and the ceiling inside that cabinet to keep the reflections down a little bit, that might make a little bit of a difference.
Very little, but it could make some.
Yeah. But it looks like from what I can see based on the reflection in the TV here, the couch might be on the back wall as well. In which case it's
possible.
In which case you need to put some absorption behind your head as well. But putting a different speaker in here is unlikely, in my opinion, my professional opinion, to make a heavy difference. Moving the speakers does.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you want to try, and this really would be a try, be prepared to spend some money on return shipping. Just because he asked. So to answer the question directly, like Ascend's HTM 200 SEs, sealed, wall mountable, contend with less than ideal placement, better than some other speakers.
Well, the Kefs are coaxial drivers, and they should also be a very good choice.
They should be good. HSUs, horn-loaded bookshelf speakers, potentially. The other one that does come to mind would be Golden Ear, because I have found that their SAT on-wall speakers contend well with suboptimal placement because they beam their sound out of those little ribbon tweeters. So you could give them a try. I'd be prepared to be disappointed.
I mean, exactly. Look at these speakers. They're placed with the woofer. Basically, the speakers are
the woofers to the insides,
and they're rotated 90 degrees. So the tweeters are on the outside, the woofers are on the inside, but the tweeters aren't even all the way to the outside of the TV. They're still inside the bezel of the TV. So they're very close. They're probably within 1.5 feet of each other. The bottom of the speakers are probably within 1.5 feet to 2 feet from each other. So they're very closely placed. And, the dialogue intelligibility problems are coming from essentially reflections. Now, I don't know if it's the reflection behind your head, if it's the reflection from it bouncing off the inside of
within the entertainment center,
or the back of the TV and everything, and then it's just coming out in all kind of weird directions.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you're getting some sound wave cancellation from the woofers just being beside each other too.
Quite literally taking them off the wall, putting them on a stack of books on either side of your entertainment center, and just saying, honey, let's just try it and see what it sounds like this. Does this help? And if it makes a humongous difference, you're like, well, I know we don't want to have them out of here, but that kind of looks dumb. I mean,
could we even try putting the speakers on, so the surface that the table is standing on right now, you put them down there so that at least they can be forward.
Yes.
Right. Forward of the entertainment center. You can bring them just proud of the front of the entertainment center, and then you wall mount the TV so it's high enough that it's out of the way of the speakers.
Right.
Could we even try that?
So where that stack of DVDs is right now, could we put them there?
That's right.
And then, I was wall mounting the TV is a good idea, or just placing the TV, just putting it on a small stand or something like that.
Getting some feet that are tall enough that the TV will be above the speakers. That's all.
That would be good too.
Even that, because that costs very little money. All you're talking about is a TV wall mount or some tall, those.
I literally do not think that buying speakers is solution 7 in the list of solutions I would propose for this problem. So
I would love to hit.
You could try it.
2 more questions because we have 25 on the list and we're falling behind.
I don't care about that. Jason has been using his Paradigm Titan speakers for almost 20 years now. He's been pretty happy with them, but he's feeling the upgrade bug. He's in this apartment and he keeps the volume low. Sometimes he struggles a bit to hear dialogue clearly. That's what happens when you keep the volume low. He doesn't get any sense of air in the high treble. Again, what happens when the volume's low. He'd like to know if a new pair of bookshelf speakers might offer an improvement in these areas. He's thinking around $800 a pair is as much as he'd like to spend. He's been considering clips, as their horns seem to punch up the treble, and maybe their high sensitivity would help with this dialogue. What do we think? Is there something else we would recommend much more highly? Okay, this idea that, because we've said it before that clip speakers and those horn load speakers in general can be treble heavy, but in your case, that's immaterial to your problem. Your problem is that you want to hear the dialogue clearly, but you don't want it to be loud. So what's going to end up happening is if these speakers end up being a little bit more shrill, because you've of the design. And I'm not saying that clips are shrill, but let's just say that they were, or you bought a shrill speaker. All you're going to do is turn the volume down even lower until you're still having a problem with the intelligibility. Now, the Titan speakers are what those itty bitty satellites,
no,
right?
those were the Atoms. Those were the Paradigm Atoms. The Titans were the full-size bookshelf, stand mount monitors.
I mean, again,
they're good speakers.
I have no problems with these speakers as being an issue. Again, most of the time, I'm telling you, dialogue intelligibility is rarely about the speakers. It's almost always about the speaker placement. In your case, it might be somewhat about the volume, but it's because I don't care who you are. You turn the volume down too low, you can't hear it. I mean,
he's had these speakers for more than 20 years, so he's
ready to
more
upgrade.
Than 20 years old.
Right.
I'm betting you got these speakers when you were either a teenager or in your 20s, so you're probably over 35. I hate to break it to you, we're all starting to lose a little bit of that high frequency hearing over the age of 35. I hate it. I hate it. I'm down to 17 kilohertz now. I hate it.
If you want to go and buy new speakers, I got no problems with that, and we can come up with tons of recommendations for that. But your dialogue intelligibility is going to more closely. I think if you just take these new speakers, put them where the old speakers are, you're going to be like, still can't hear it as well as I would like to hear it.
Could be. So
you're going to have to deal with whatever problems there are in placement here, as far as is there any reflections going on and that sort of thing. But for $800, I'm going to go right back to suggesting RBHs, which is what I've been doing lately. So
the Impression Elites. Here's the thing about the Impression Elites. If you get them and try them and you hear no improvement, it's not the speaker's fault. There. So that's a great experiment to run.
It's not them, it's you.
That's right.
Or more likely, it's not them, it's your placement.
It's something about your setup. It could be where your seat is placed. That could be the issue. But yeah, if you get those speakers, they are not to blame. And they were like $500 a pair. So they're well within his budget range. Yeah. The only other thing I would point you to, and again, no surprise for me, but Ascend Sierra 2s. Because if the issue is separating sounds from each other, delineating sounds from each other, nothing does it much better than Sierra 2s or the Sierra Lunas. If you're 12 feet or closer, the slightly less expensive, although the CR2s are on sale right now for $12.50 a pair, so it's like $100 less. But yeah, one of those with that RAL ribbon tweeter. If you want to hear maximum delineation and find out if it's the speakers, that's the other way. But they're over $800, $12.50 or $11.50. So yeah, the RBHs would be the affordable way to find out if the speakers are to blame.
Carl on Twitter asks, "What's a good option for free or low cost software for drawing a home theater layout?" I don't know. I did it with something way a long time ago, and I can't remember how I did it. But it was some free online service.
I am hoping that some of our listeners chime in, because I know for a fact at least 2 people told me what they used for drawing their home theater plans, and I don't think it was what I'm going to suggest, which is SketchUp. SketchUp it used to be Google SketchUp, but now it's like owned by a different company. But still, that AVS forum, a lot of people use SketchUp over there. So I don't think I'm steering you wrong if you check that out. I think
this is what I used
it could be.
To do my home theater back when I was modeling it for a company to give me. It wasn't my home theater; it was my office, but for acoustic panels.
Okay. So yeah, you can check out SketchUp. I don't think we're steering you wrong with that, but I know some people used things that I think were different than that. So please chime back in, because I can't recall.
All right, so we'll get some from listeners here. We'll do one more. Heath. First up, Heath says he's finally added acoustic treatments a few weeks ago, and they made a big improvement, so he's thankful for that advice.
Yeah.
Last year, Heath went through multiple subwoofer amplifiers that kept dying on him. He also had one amplifier channel on his Marantz SR7010, which he had bought from accessories for less, stopped working on him, and rather than having that repaired, he just used an external amp instead, and everything has been functioning for the past year or so until now. Jeez, dude, this guy and his electricity.
I know.
He noticed he was getting no bass again. He thought maybe his subwoofer amplifiers had failed again, but he connected his phone directly to each sub and confirmed that they're working fine. So it's the subwoofer outputs on his Marantz. They've stopped working. And being a refurbished unit from accessories for less, it is out of warranty now. So do we have any ideas at all? Any other workaround? So some way to get the SR7010 replaced for as close to free as possible? You need an electrician. There is something.
Something is weird.
Something is wrong with this. With you're having a short somewhere in your house.
What is going? I mean, a surge. Is there like
it's a surge? Yeah, it's blowing out your amplifier channels, and I don't know why it's happening, but something in your house is weird. So at this point, you absolutely want. I think it's imperative that you at very least talk to an experienced, knowledgeable electrician who you trust to come in here and diagnose. Like, just tell him, dude, there's just no way I can be having this bad of luck.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where you want to get in touch with SurgeX and see if you can get one of those. They have that diagnostic tool that can report on all power events. It just keeps a log of all power events, things that aren't enough to trip a breaker, because anybody's going to notice that.
Right.
But there can be all kinds of power events that are going on that you're not going to be able to observe. It's electricity. It's happening inside the walls. But yeah, it would be worth it, because this is not right. This should not be happening this much. He was like, "Oh, is it because it was a refurbished unit?" I'm like,
no.
Obviously, that's not impossible. But given that all this was happening to subwoofers over and over, and it's like, I don't think it could just be a run of really bad luck of equipment. Yes, but
it could be, but I find that highly unlikely. As far as getting it replaced or whatever, I mean, your best bet, is to call Marantz, I suppose, but even they are not going to do anything for you. I would not expect any company to say, "Hey, Mr. goes through amps, 3 times a year. No, we're not sending you a new thing because, reasons, and we aren't made of money."
I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to call them. It doesn't hurt to even call Accessories for Less, but I'm not going to tell you that they will or should, give you a free replacement or that. I don't think that's incumbent upon them to do that.
Right.
But it certainly doesn't hurt to call them.
Right. That being said, I mean, I don't really think if I were you, I'd be replacing anything in this room until I figured out what the problem was.
I mean, the workaround to just continue with what you have, but at least get a signal going to your subwoofers again, is to use the pre-outs, set your front left, right speakers to large and the subwoofer to off. Now, you could just do, because we know he has an external amp of some sort.
Right.
So you will have to connect the pre-outs first to the subwoofers, then have the subwoofers outputs connected to an external amp, which will then power your front, left, right speakers.
Right, use a crossover.
Although the pre-outs are always hot, right? So he could actually still just power the front, left, right speakers off of the speaker binding posts, and the pre-outs will still be hot, sending a full range signal.
Yeah, that's true.
Subs.
Yeah.
So the only thing there is that now you have set your front, left, right speakers too large. So you're not getting a high pass filter on the bottom of your speakers, your front, left, right speakers anymore.
Right.
So if you do use pre-outs for everything and you connect your front, left, right speakers to an external amp, you could attach a MiniDSP, right? A MiniDSP could be an external crossover. So it's either that. Either you run your front, left, right speakers full range and you send the front, left, right pre-outs to your subwoofers, because the subwoofers have a low-pass filter built in. That's not a problem for them.
Right.
So yeah, that would be the workaround to at least get a signal going to your subs again.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this week. What we got left?
That sounds good. We have Justin L., Matt E., who came back with some updates. Whoa, that scrolled way too much. All right, catching back. Where was I? Okay, Jonathan F., Nathan D., Mark R., and Dan H. You fellas are all on the list for next week.
All right, I want to thank our listeners of the week, Ray, Steve, and James, who went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. And also thank our AD patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, Ray, Steve, James, thank you very much for coming to avrant.com, going over the right-hand side and clicking support the podcast to take you to PayPal. And thanks very much to our 80 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
I'd also like to thank Mark for talking us up to Parts Express.
Yeah, Mark, congrats on getting that inexpensive speaker grill fabric. That's good that you found that. Made some DIY acoustic panels. That's good to know. So thanks for talking us up to Parts Express.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.